Hey guys, so firstly I just want to say this video is supposed to go up way sooner. I've been requested so much to review In the Tall Grass, obviously. And then I got really sick last week, so I was pretty much down and out for a full 7 days, so that's why this video is so late. It was supposed to go up last week anyway. But also, before we get into the review, I just want to say, guess where I was this morning? Guess who I got to meet maybe about 2 hours ago? Emma from Spooky Astronauts. And look, see, we are different people. She's on her American trip right now, driving from Canada to LA, so she stopped in through Sacramento, so I was able to meet up with her for coffee this morning, and she is such a sweetheart. She's so nice, so funny. I'm so grateful that she was able to stop in my city and have coffee with me. It was so cool. Okay, let's get into the review for In the Tall Grass. Now, this is a Netflix movie based on the novella written by Stephen King and Joe Hill, aka Stephen King's son. So automatically, any Stephen King adaptation that is announced, it's going to be a super anticipated movie for me. So this is obviously no exception. I was very excited for it. I was trying not to get my hopes up because after reading the novella, it gets messed up, and I just did not think that Netflix would make a movie that was like as messed up as the novella was. However, I was super excited to see how they would turn it into a movie, into a full-length feature film, because that is something when it's just a novella, the story is a lot simpler and they don't really delve too much into the characters, and also you get more character development through the narration of the story, and it's hard to portray that when you have so little to work with and, you know, make it into a full-length movie that has depth. So because it's like a short novella story, I felt like it was lacking enough plot to really stretch out into a movie, but I was still excited. I was like, let's see where they take this, what they do with it, if they add anything to it. And they didn't really add much to it. They definitely changed some things, which I will get into more specifically when we get into spoilers, but I will say that my biggest critique is that the plot is the weakest point. I felt like it didn't translate that well from novella to movie, and it did have a Stephen King atmosphere. Sorry if I'm nasally, I'm still getting over my sickness. It did have like a Stephen King atmosphere. It felt Stephen King-esque, you know, but I don't think it was as much as it was in the novella, if that makes any sense. And it's not necessarily like a super big negative, because given the plot, I feel like they couldn't really delve further into the characters, and it does make for an easy kind of watch. I don't feel like this movie is very complicated, although underlying themes are definitely there that are a little bit more complex. Although you're still kind of left wondering what's really going on in this field. They do kind of explain it, but it's not, I don't know. I feel like even in the novella they don't explain it that much, but maybe that's just me misremembering. I don't know, I have a horrible memory. So let me talk a little bit about the movie and the plot in case you haven't seen the trailers or haven't heard anything about it. So this movie follows a brother and sister who are moving across the country. The sister is pregnant and she is debating whether or not to keep the baby, whether to give it up for adoption or keep it. And so on their way, I think they're driving through Kansas, where like the whole movie happens and the story. She has to vomit because she's pregnant, so she, feels ill. She asks her brother to pull over. When he does, they hear screaming coming from this field of tall grass. So she enters the field because it sounds like a child that's in distress, and he follows after her, and then things transpire. They get trapped in the field, and time and space become an illusion, and they play a lot with that whole thing. And then you kind of figure out there's something supernatural going on because, like I said, space and time is warped in the field. It's not normal. Things aren't, time's not passing as normal. Locations change when they're in the field, so it's just like a very bizarre thing going on, obviously. Which I think that created some of the most unnerving imagery in the whole movie, and that was exciting to see because they stayed pretty true to that from the novella, and that was obviously a really cool part, is that time and space is not as it seems in the field of grass. There were, like I said, the novella, the story, it gets messed up like very messed up, and I was a little bit worried that they would tone it down too much to where they lose a lot of the disturbing factors that make the story messed up. You know, it's not that I wanted to see what was in the story take place in the movie, but I do like when they aren't afraid to go there. And they did include the one disturbing part, although made it more vague, which I thought translated well in the movie. So I thought that was really well done. Sorry if I'm being really vague, it's because I don't want to spoil what the actual scene is, but I will talk about it in a minute when we do spoilers. So it's definitely not my favorite Stephen King Netflix adaptation that's come out. I think Gerald's Game was fantastic, although I did not read the book for that, so the comparison, it might be different. It might be skewing my review because I did enjoy the novella. I feel like the movie was just a little bit more lackluster compared to the novella, so I think I don't know. I was gonna say it might be a better viewing having having read the novella, but now I'm kind of second guessing that because then you're gonna be comparing, and I feel like the atmosphere and everything is just scarier in the story than in the movie. Now I'm gonna get into spoilers, which is where my real commentary really comes into play, because there are certain things that are changed from the story in the movie that I want to talk about. So if you haven't seen the movie yet or read the story and don't want to know what happens and what that scene is, then tune out now. So we're going to talk about that scene first, okay? So first of all, trigger warning for pregnancy issues and stillbirth and baby things. I know that's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, so just saying it's very graphic. I'm gonna be talking about it, so it might be very graphic for you. Just wanted to throw that out there. So Becky is pregnant and she ends up passing out, and when she wakes up, she had given birth, but the baby was not alive. So she isn't really aware of this, so she's kind of asking her brother, how is the baby? And she's delirious from like hunger, thirst, things like that. She hasn't eaten, and exhaustion, and like I said, time is warped in there, so it might feel like a longer amount of time. So her brother lies to her and says that the baby is just fine and proceeds to feed her it. Like, that is the level of desperation and direness of this situation that they're in, that because the baby was born already dead, they go ahead and eat it. It's very, very dark. And so when they announced the movie, that was the first thought that came into my head. I was like, are they gonna go there? They're not gonna put that in the movie. Like, for sure they're not gonna do that. That's too far, you know? But the way they did it in the movie, I felt was very appropriate for the movie's atmosphere. It wasn't super straightforward. Like, you kind of understand what's going on, and you know, like, what he's feeding her, because there's not a lot of options around. So like, you get it. They don't make it super, super graphic though, which I appreciate because they don't need to. It's just the idea alone that is so disturbing. However, this whole idea is much more fitting for me in the novella, because the movie atmosphere is almost a little bit lighter. It's not as dire. It is dire, but it's like hard to explain. The way that the characters are written, their like dialogue and things like that in the story, it just makes it seem like a darker, dire situation than what is portrayed in the movie. So when it goes there, it's like really jarring to me. It's not like entirely out of place in the movie, but it's very shocking in the movie. And I mean, I guess it's a reminder of like how messed up that this tall grass really affects people and stuff like that. So one thing that was really, really changed in the movie was the ending. So I wasn't anticipating the kind of happy ending that we get in the movie. I don't know, I just felt like the end of the novella was more realistic, but maybe they didn't want to go that route. They kind of almost did though in the movie. Let me explain. So there's this rock, right? When you touch it, you like you have clarity for everything, right? You're just better when you touch it. I think it was all explained a little bit better in the novella versus the movie, but given that they couldn't really verbally explain it as much in the movie, it kind of makes sense. To me, it made it more confusing in the movie because you're like, what's this rock? So in the novella, they all end up touching the rock and like dying in the grass, and that's kind of what happens in the movie. Technically, they all do die in the grass except the little boy, and he ends up being able to run out of the grass and stop the brother and sister from entering. So it's like his whole time warp thing, right? So he like proves that he's met them before and says, don't go in this grass, and convinces them not to, but then they had already just died in the grass. So it was like a really weird thing that they did for the movie that was not in the book. Personally, I prefer a like non-happy ending, which the movie kind of gives us a little bit of both, because it's disturbing, you see people die and stuff like that, but then in the end it ends up being kind of happy because he stops them from going into the grass at all, like ever. So does that just erase everything that just happened? I don't know. I was expecting to love it, but it wasn't there for me. I don't know. I have mixed emotions about the movie, to be honest. I don't know if it was a bad thing that I read the novella first, so now I'm like having all these comparisons, but there's just something that I didn't enjoy about the movie as much as I did the novella. Let me know in the comments if you've watched this movie and what your thoughts are on it, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.